So hi everyone, thanks for joining Drift Happens. I'm your host, Amber Roberts. I'm an MLE at Arize. And Drift Happens, we're doing it as a live stream Q&A style. So I'll be interviewing Ceci, who is our guest today, on topics related to machine learning development, best practices as an MLE, use cases, and then ML in production. Ceci, we're so happy to have you here today. Can you give us a brief intro?
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. And before my introduction, I want to apologize for my horrible voice. I got a cold yesterday, so now I'm just sounds like I have been smoking for like 30 years or something. So sorry about that. So my name is Ceci. I am a machine learning engineer. I work with Liftoff Mobile for almost 2 years now. And I work at 2 other companies before this as a data scientist. And before that, I'm an aerospace engineer. And personally, I really like not only the modeling part, but also the whole system around it. And that's why I just found myself really happy at Liftoff, because as an MLE, we actually do a lot of the thing around the model, not just the model.
Great. And can you tell us a little bit more about Liftoff, like as a company? So like what their mission statement is, and then we'll get more into like your role there.
Yeah, so Liftoff Mobile is a ad tech company, a programmatic advertising company. The company actually has a lot of product in different area of the whole ad tech ecosystem, especially after we merged with OneGo last year. But I personally work on the demand side platform, so I think I mostly would touch on that part. And so DSP is the build system to help advertiser to buy the right ad with the right price. So our like the main mission is to help app to grow and monetize.
Okay. And then so like the ad tech space, like that's an interesting area. Now, did you like always want to work in the ad tech space, or was it just like a great team and like interesting problems? Like what made you join Liftoff?
Yeah, that's really interesting question, because I didn't want to work at ad tech, because when I first see the ad tech, when I search Liftoff, because they reached out to me, so I did some homework. When I see ad tech, it's like, oh no, evil company. but then I will just open to talk, because it's not a commitment just to talk. So I talked to them, but then throughout the whole interview process, I just found everyone that I talked to is really genuine, and they sound really nice. They definitely don't give me the whole bro vibe. And like I mentioned earlier, I really like the whole vertical integration, that you actually do everything along the model lifecycle. And it's kind of hard to find in other company. You're really just like doing the data scientist job, like the model development, and then you pass the model to a different engineer to deploy it. And then when I learned that Liftoff the ML group does like everything, and that's how I decided to join them.
Okay. Yeah, as I know there's some pretty great folks at Liftoff. So like that's really awesome. And then in terms of like actually transitioning into the field of AI, like we've talked to several guests of like how they've gotten into this field, because almost no one has a background in it because it's very new. No one like went to school like and got a machine learning and engineering like bachelor's degree. So how did you kind of train like for this role, and like any tips on like transitioning into AI?
Yeah, so luckily my previous expertise in aerospace engineering, so a lot of math is the same. So I would say that if anybody who have a strong math background will have an easiest time to transition to MLE. And then just to find yeah, for me, I have the math background. And then for the programming part, luckily, like for programming, I feel like there's always so many online resources. So I just utilize a lot of online resource to help me to ramp up on the software part. And it's just I feel like because there's so many like online resource, as a you always can find something to ramp yourself up, and that's such a big community too. You can always just ask someone like, hey, like I have a question on this, I want to learn about more about this, and usually I found it's really easy to get help. And even for for people that don't have such strong math background, I feel like you can always start with like something different that not as heavy as in the programming part. You can always start as like data scientist, or like even like a data analytic, and then you just like slowly and just go to MLE. I always think about life as like a video game. You just like upon one.
Level up, yeah, as you go. And feel free to have water at any point through this, like, because those that didn't join, Ceci's getting over a cold. So definitely hydrate when you want to. Okay, awesome. And then so for your, like we talked about a bit like the use cases, Liftoff mission statement, what vertical are you focused on, and like what's your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, so the vertical I focus on, like I mentioned earlier, is the demand side platform system. So the team I'm working on, we mostly build our main job is to build conversion model. So we build a model to predict like the probability of like let's say an ad to convert like in either one of the down funnel events. So my day-to-day job really depend on whatever project I'm working on, but it will involve a lot of kicking off model experiment, and sometimes the model to kick off before kicking off model experiment, I will also code a lot in our code base to make update to our model, and also besides on the coding and the model development. Well, I guess I also want to add for the coding part, not only I'm coding, making code to update how we train the model, we also will make code change in like the bidding path, which means when we actually make using the part of code that we're using the model to bid ad. And besides like coding and like kicking off experiment, I think we do a lot of writing as well. Our company have a strong documentation culture. So any idea we want to propose, or even like for experiment, decide that we will write down and share. And I think that's why I like Google Docs so much. It's just so easy to collaborate to. You write something, and then people can just make comment on it, and you can continue that conversation on the decide there. And yeah, I like it also. Yeah, I would say the other half of time is just like writing down idea, collaborating with people, brainstorming idea, and just meeting with other team to get better on like the business context. Because like the model we made, even though we can have like a really good offline matches, but it doesn't really mean anything if we cannot really translate into like a good business metrics. So we will have sometimes a meeting with other team to just talk about how like the model actually behave in like a business context.
Right. And then in terms of like the infrastructure, scalability is obviously very important for a lot of teams, like, but especially with your use case and ad tech. In our Arize, like we try to specialize on very large scale data, because anything can look good and anything can work on small amounts. It's when you get to that large scale that things start to break and become very difficult. Anything you want to comment on for the kind of scale of data and things to keep in mind?
Yeah, so definitely for our case, we definitely have a really large scale of data. To just give a number, our Kafka process 2 GB of data per second. So that's like a lot of data. And so a lot of our system is built around knowing that that's that many data that we need to process. And there's always like some challenge with it. For example, because it's really hard. It's a challenge to do feature analysis, mainly because a lot of our system is built in-house and they have narrow use case. They work really, really well for the case that we meant originally built for. And they actually making sure that everything is really fast, like the prediction is fast, and then the continued training is fast. But then it will just have the challenge that it when we try to use something else, for example, if we want to do any like feature analysis, it's not as easy because one is because the current system doesn't suit really well for, but also because we have a large data set, so it's not so easy to just like naively to do any like feature analysis that you can think of in like other use case. And like we will also have like so for our model training data logging, we will like downsample like the negative just because we have like so many data. So yeah, it's definitely something that we always talk about when we decide any system in our company.
Right. And then speaking about like systems and kind of like integrations at Liftoff, each company kind of goes through, build versus buy evaluations of various products, seeing like what they can do in-house versus like what is worth outsourcing. So what are some of, I guess, like either like current or future ML systems, or the ones of like in-house versus outsourcing various, I would say, I guess like various top of the line, like state-of-the-art ML infrastructure tools?
Yeah, so I think so most of the product that we are using right now, they are mostly built in-house. And it was built before I joined, so I wouldn't speak too much of like why it was done that way. But I think it's as a product of moving fast. And because it can just, a lot of our system, they are really lean based on my observation. So they are really just built in like a specific case that we're looking to do. For example, we have a experiment tracking tool that like it will, as a UI, you can go on and you can see the some of the measures of each performance, and it's really simple. It's nothing like really complex. It cannot really do a lot of fancy thing like any like experiment tracking tool that in the market right now, but it does the job. And I think like probably back then it's just like it was quick. You can just build it really quickly and like tailor it down to the user case. So it has been working really well, but currently we do have some push to trying to move toward a more standard tool. One is just because we kind of feel a bit the pain when we try to expand, because before I think our ML is really more focused on the conversion model, but now we also have so many other like ML applications, for example, like pacing the budget and like market price. But then every time when we try to build a new model, because the narrow like new type of application, because of the narrow cases, is a bit hard.
Right.
And secondly, and it also is really hard to onboard people to use it like a really in-house product or like narrow cases. So because of that, we're also thinking that perhaps it's like better to try to investigate the possibility to use other tool that actually be more flexible and will apply on all the ML application in our company. And actually some of our team are using the other team, I know some other team use like weights and bias, which is like another like experiment tracking tool, and I heard so far like has like a good experience. So that also like kind of motivate us to like investigate more to using like
Yeah. Do you have some favorite tools that you use in your tech stack?
I'll say that again.
Do you have some favorite tools that you are using in your tech stack and things that just make life a little easier for like an MLE?
Yeah. Let me think. I actually really like the I really like Trino. It's just like a database table. I like it. I think it's make it really simple for me. It's just like I can look at like investigate any data really quickly. I also really like a table that our analytic team made. So like I mentioned earlier, that our data set is large. So if we want to do any like data analysis to, let's say, the impression level, it's really hard, it's really slow. But like our product analytic team, they actually made some analytic table, like a daily, hourly analytic table, which they would do like a daily job to put the raw data into some dimension. They would just group that in certain dimension that we care about, and then the matrix in those dimension. I actually like it a lot. It doesn't sound like anything fancy, but I like it a lot because it just makes me really easy to look at data without just waiting forever for a query to run.
I think most MLEs, like the favorite tool is the one that saves them time doing busy work, and isn't necessarily like, it isn't necessarily the coolest thing, but it's a tool that tends to solve a lot of the pain points, so that you can focus on doing the parts you like most, and not have to worry about like all the extra. But in terms of just some best practices that you find, what are some best practices maybe in terms of like model training, development, experimentation? So kind of like the ML like model life cycle.
Yeah, so I would say that I guess let me do it one by one. So for training, developing, I think having a good protocol is really good. So for us, whenever we do experiment, when we write a report, we just outline the whole protocol, so everyone know exactly what you're doing. And the system we build also ensure reproducibility. So when someone train a model, and then if you want to reproduce without you follow the protocol, you should be able to do the same one if you're doing a thing right. So that's really important. And also like the experiment tracking that I mentioned, I think it's also really important, just being able to share. You don't have to have the same experiment tracking, like us, but I think just any type of tool that you're able to share result really easy. Not just like the aggregate result, not just like, okay, the RMSE is this, but like able to share like a more detailed result is important. And then in terms of in model in production, I would say that depend on what type of application. So for us, the model freshness is really important. So we have to ensure that we build such a system that we can continuously train model and deploy new model. But if we automated that, we also want to ensure some type of safety. So we also like build a system to have automatic safety check to ensure that we don't promote any bad model. And then like I guess like also like what also another best practice I would say for model experiment, or like when you decide to roll out a model, is also not just look at the aggregate without because sometimes we would just say that, oh, this model is better because on the aggregate level is better, but like there's just so much more to look. For example, because our model is using by so many campaign, so it's always too good to see like the impact distribution for all campaigns instead of just like one metric.
Right. And then in terms of production workflows, so we know a lot of time, actually, like 90% of time spent in the model development cycle is in the data prep, like model experimentation, model evaluation, and model deployment phase. And Arize has actually surveyed over 1,000 MLEs at various companies, and we find that less than 1% of time is actually spent in production. Part of that is because when these models fail, they fail silently. It can be very difficult to detect when a model's underperforming. These models drift. There's not really like a set, best practice like that's universal on how to treat these models in production. And not everyone can retrain all their models every day. And sometimes that's just expensive and not always the best answer. So in terms of like models in production, what are some things that like you look for or keep in mind? Like what's important when we think about our models being live and our models like obviously having an impact on folks?
Yeah. So for our model in production, we also have data, like dashboard data that we keep track of how is like some of the live metrics. For us, we will have, let's say, like the calibration. So calibration is what we predict on like a pretty aggregate level, what we predict the conversion is and what the actual conversion is. So we do have those dashboard that we're able to keep track of it to make sure like the model in production, it is healthy. And I guess luckily I feel like because we're in like a fairly large company, so there are also other team that help us to monitor like the campaign health. So usually we would I feel like they are all more on the front line to observe if those model is like doing perform well. And yeah, and then we so usually it's pretty safer. And I think like also we take pretty precaution in the testing phase as well. So whenever we develop a model, when we do A/B tests, or when we just roll out, we also have like a really rigorous rollout plan that not just like the MLE, we involve like the team who manage the campaign. Also, we have like the technical product manager, and also more like customer facing team. So we're more looking at like how is like such a change is going to change like the in terms of the business content. So usually we will plan that out like carefully during the test. So hopefully when we're actually rolling out in production, we don't see any like big of surprise.
Mm-hmm. And then so the ad tech space, like you're getting like feedback on your models pretty fast. Are you a majority of your use cases, do you get the ground truths back and then you can measure performance, or are a lot of the models like a delayed ground truth where you need to look for drift and like data quality issues in production?
Yeah, so some event is pretty quick. Some event, for example, like if someone install, that's usually pretty quick. But if someone purchase something, usually take a bit slower. So we do have some like attribution delay, and we do have some technique to correct that in our model training. And so it is fairly quickly we have ground truth, but I like to put like a quotation around ground truth is because we I think like most machine learning model have like the feedback loop issue, but I will feel like for our case probably worse because how our model perform, how our model behave actually will affect what traffic we buy. So it's always like there's a bias in the sample that we see. So yeah, we have ground truth, but we don't know if that ground truth is the ground truth of the whole population. But we definitely have the ground truth for the sample that we get.
Yeah, that's a good point. And just a little shameless plug, like the free version of the Arize product is available on our site. And that does help monitor for performance, drift, data quality, and actually like bias tracing as well. So anyone can go and even upload their own data for that tracking. All right, well, Ceci, we talked a lot about kind of like the engineering, the transitioning into AI, infrastructure at Liftoff, like best practices. I just want to touch a bit on like also diversity in engineering, because I know we have talked offline about like the importance there, the things that can be done, and just wanting to hear like some of your thoughts and kind of like what you think like what you look for in companies that, you know, signals that they're doing like a good job, and kind of things that you want to be involved with.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for asking that question because definitely a passion of mine. So yeah, I would say what I look for is that so it is quite hard to find a really diverse engineering group because unfortunately, even like in the greater society in college, it's not really diverse. But I would say that what I look for is a team that at least they are open to try. Because to be honest, I think Liftoff engineering group, I wouldn't say we're a really diverse group. But I think like everyone there is really nice that they're really open to try and actively to make it better. And I think the reason why they haven't been better is just because like they just lack of someone to actually take a more active role to tell them is that, hey, I think there's something that we can change. So I would say like if anyone also care about such topic, it would be good that you be the person to speak up. And then like if the team that you know the team is good is when you speak up, you see that they are actually listen and they're open to your feedback, no matter if negative or positive, and that they will take some action. Sometimes the action can be slow, just because of various reasons, but as long as you see like they're open to change, that they are willing to move any of the idea you have forward, I think that's a good side. And it's exciting. It's exciting. You can be the part of the team that actually making the change.
Yeah, like being part of the solution. Yeah, I completely agree. I've talked with like a lot of teams and nowhere do I find like a balance, just because like you mentioned, when you go and just like from the education system, it's imbalanced. But I think teams' attitude towards it and approach to it of like, yes, this is something we care about. We want to do more things. Like that's definitely a great sign. And folks attending, Ceci and I have talked about like, you know, doing more like women in engineering events. And I'm excited to see like, you know, some of the events that we can put together there. And I just completely agree that taking an active role, and, you know, having that supportive team that is, you know, is not only willing to listen, but wants to be part of that solution is huge. And that really creates like a great environment for a diverse team. So like diversity, not just in like women engineers, but like having like a full set of folks from minorities, like also in engineering. So that's really great. We are at time. Ceci, thank you so much for joining. I always enjoy talking with you, and thanks everyone who attended. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.